Dear friends, today we have with us a very special guest. Today we have the CEO of Multicultural New South Wales, Joseph La Posta, with us. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us.
Namaskar. Hello, everyone. Hello, Pallavi. Thank you very much for inviting me on the show.
Yeah. Joseph, I want to begin by asking that how multicultural is New South Wales and what has been the contribution of the diverse communities in building modern New South Wales?
Oh, it's a wonderful question. I think multiculturalism began in Australia, well, ultimately with our First Nations people, over 137 different languages spoken by our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. But then, the modern chapter probably started after European settlement here. It wasn't long before, obviously, you had people from the United Kingdom, England and Ireland and some of the other areas immediately around Scotland, to a lesser extent in Wales. But then very quickly in the early 1820s, you had people coming from China as part of the gold rush. And then there's been various different iterations over the course of time with various different waves of migration, particularly picking up after the Second World War with lots of Italians and Greeks. And then, since that time, a real tapestry to where we are today, Pallavi, in New South Wales, where we have over 300 different ancestries just in New South Wales, over 275 different languages spoken, and we practice over 135 different faith traditions.
Wow. Also want to ask you, Joseph, that what exactly is the role of Multicultural New South Wales and how does it help the communities here?
Oh, it's an excellent question. So we're a government department that has been put here to help ensure that the multicultural principles, which are part of the New South Wales government legislation. So we are the first state in Australia and the second state in the world to enshrine multicultural principles in our legislation. And effectively, to summarise the multicultural principles, that's about the fact that everyone needs to adhere to Australian law and to bind together under the auspices of Australian values, but that you are free to practice your different language, your different culture, and your different religious traditions, as long as they're not at odds with Australian law. So it's pretty exciting to have such a rich history as a state in terms of celebrating multiculturalism. But as you sort of alluded to before, that can become increasingly difficult when you have more and more people coming here as migrants and as new migrants to this country, to make sure we strike the right balance between what it is to be Australian, but also to be, an Australian of Italian descent, an Australian proudly of Indian descent, and so forth, but making sure that our Australian identity is something that we all hold dear to us as a common and a binding element.
Yeah, actually, that was my next question, because Australia is a terrific example of successful multiculturalism where, some others, one could say, have failed. So what would you attribute this success to? What are the reasons do you think that Australia is more or less, one can say, a successful multicultural country?
Yeah, I think my personal view is there's a few reasons for that. One is, I think we're a country that's built off migration. So many people have come here under the auspices of wanting to build a better life. So whether that's people that have fled war or persecution, or people that have come here to enhance their studies or their further education or their employment prospects or their qualifications, by and large, people come to Australia with the common element to want to set themselves up, their families up, to be as successful as possible. So with that is a common interest. It's very few people, I think, come here with a high level of entitlement or a sense of superiority. The majority of people come here, they want to work hard, they want to establish their wealth, they want to get on with the job and build a better life for themselves and for their children following them. That's a pretty good binding element as a starting point. I think the other part is that we're a pretty egalitarian society. So yes, there's some elements of rich and poor, but by and large, the majority of our wealth is centralized in the middle class. So with that means that we've got often more things in common, regardless of whether we might have a Hindu, a Catholic Italian, a Vietnamese, Christian, all living in the same street. The reality of the situation is most of us are of working or of middle class. We all send our kids to schools. We all work jobs. And to be honest, our precious time that we have on the weekends or in the evenings is largely spent with families or friends over barbecues or going to the gym or sporting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's actually lots of elements that are quite common in those sorts of things. Because of the way that a lot of our structures and our townships are set up, You know, you've got low front fences, you've got good neighborly relations, all of those different things. It's not like we're built into, you know, strong gated communities that are car dependent. Many of us mix as we either, you know, walk to the public transport, go to school, go to the sporting clubs, all of those different things. So I think there's lots of touch points for all the difference that exists in New South Wales to coexist, and for us to break down those barriers and build a mutual understanding of what it is to be an Australian proudly of Indian descent, an Australian proudly of Vietnamese descent, Yugoslavian, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I can, like, even from my personal experience, I mean, that's the most beautiful thing, that one of the things that I felt when I came here initially, that, you know, it's very fluid. Like, you don't have to belong to any bracket. The identity is really fluid, you know, so it was quite amazing.
Yeah. And I think if you show the universal principles of respect and kindness, and you extend yourself to your neighbors, then very quickly, you know, it's not going to be long. I mean, you even think about our parents. It would have been strange in a sense for our parents to sit there and go, "Oh, okay, I'm an Italian from that is a strong Catholic. You might be someone from the Indian community that is a Hindu or a Jain or a Sikh." There is very little in common that the values of my parents would have had with, you know, an Indian migrant family. Whereas today, by and large, we're all going to the same schools. We're all in the mix together. We all will have an appreciation of cricket or of tennis or of swimming or these sorts of things. Our kids will be in music classes together. And to be honest, it won't be long before, as our society progresses, that more and more children will become friends and ultimately become partners. And you're seeing probably more blended and mixed marriages across different faiths and different traditions than you ever had before. And I think that's a wonderful thing. If you can get the best out of the different cultures and they can fuse together and they can show both the cultures respect, then that's one of the greatest things about being Australian.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And going forward, you know, speaking about the Indian diaspora, now the Indian diaspora here has grown substantially in the last decade, one of the largest and fastest growing. So what has been their contribution, if I may ask you?
Oh, incredible. Like, if I, you know, I think it is one of the communities that we should celebrate the loudest in terms of the fact that they have come from a country that is profoundly different to Australia, a country where, you know, religion is such a strong part of the identity of many, many people that have come here from India, and have come here and excelled, whether they be doctors, lawyers, so many of our healthcare professionals, so many of our engineers. If you look at the elite in so many of our school systems and so many of our university systems, that common element of resilience, the work ethic, the values around family, all of those things have shone through, I think, from the Indian diaspora. And today, I don't think we'd be anywhere near the country that we would had we have not been open hearts and open minds and open arms to the fabric of our Indian diaspora. And I think that has given our country the edge in many respects, because, as you said before, Pallavi, you're quite right. Hindi is now one of our top 5 languages spoken. That's extraordinary when you think about a country like India that has such rich linguistic diversity, you know, states having different languages, all of that is different things. To have that symbolizes and I guess cements the fact that it is such a rapidly growing community, and that to have that now, I think nearly 50% of our Indian diaspora reside in New South Wales in Australia. That's remarkable, and so pleasing to now see the political leadership, to have the treasurer sworn in the Bhagavad Gita, to have mayors and former mayors, people like Samir Pandey and others, starting to ascend through the ranks of our politics to represent and mirror the community they're there to serve, I think is a wonderful thing. And I can't wait to see more of our mayors and councillors and politicians proudly be Australian of Indian descent.
Yeah, and following on from that, how important do you think is the India-Australia relationship going to be in terms of geopolitics and geoeconomics?
Yeah, I think two very proud democracies. I think the way that people consume media, particularly Australians of Indian descent, is very connected to their mother country back home in India. I think we're naive if we don't think that some of the challenges around the politics there, or legislation reform, or some of the tensions that might exist from time to time, we're naive if we don't think they're very going to quickly manifest here in New South Wales, and that we need to have strategies and coping mechanisms, and have the leadership of organisations such as the Australia Today and others that can provide frank and fearless advice. We have a common commitment to Australia. And whilst what happens back home is important, that we also shouldn't be importing conflict from, India or Italy or wherever we're from. That we've all come here with a common reason to do the best by our family and to contribute to this country, which is our new adopted and our home country, and to strike the right balance. In terms of the economics, I think it speaks for itself. I think India is a superpower, is a global superpower. I think Australia, if it can make sure that its trade interests are protected and enhanced, it would be incumbent upon it to have India as one of its key trading partners and have that alignment there. And I think we see that more and more. So many successful Indian Australian business chambers and alliances being established. You look at people like Barry O'Farrell and others in their role, how successful they've been in fostering even more productive dialogue. And we're starting to see more and more importing and exporting happening between the two countries. And Pallavi, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a profoundly good thing. Of course, we need to make sure our country's interests, the Australian interests, are at heart. But, the opportunities, I think, within the Indian business community and the economy are nigh on endless.
And just last question before I leave you, Joseph, what's your favorite Indian dish? I had to ask you.
I'm just going to say this. There are so many. I love roti. I'm a big sucker for cheese naan, and I know that you can probably see by my plump cheeks and my increasing waistline that I love my cheese naan. Chicken tikka masala. I love my dals. I love pretty much all of my curries. I love my vegetarian curries, palak paneer. I think I can't actually, Pallavi, that's not a straightforward answer. And then I love when you go to places and they start to fuse seafood dishes with some of the traditional curries and all of those different things as well. And you get the best of the spices and you get the best of the Australian. I'm very partial to a kingfisher. I think you guys do beer wonderfully well. So it is one of my favorite dishes. And a very dear friend of mine who recently passed, but Dr. Haranath and I were very, very partial almost every Friday to having a nice lunch in and around Harris Park and frequenting all of the different restaurants that sat around there. Yeah, we're very grateful. And Pallavi, yes, I could talk underwater about how wonderful your food is. And yeah, I make no apologies for that. So if anyone watching today wants me to come out and try one of your restaurants, please, my wife and I would only be too happy to.
Joseph, thank you so much for taking out time and speaking with us. Thank you so much.
Pallavi, can I just say a big thanks to the Australia Today? It's not easy being a publication in Australia. There are lots of commercial challenges that you have each and every day. Connecting with your diaspora and your audience is never an easy thing to do when there's so many competing media streams. But you guys do a wonderful job. And if I can just thank you for what has been a wonderful stewardship over a significant period of time. On behalf of my agency, Multicultural New South Wales, we wish you nothing, you and the team, for a future success.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Your words mean a lot. Thank you so much.